Kyle, are you still in there?
Yeah.
On the when I look at the live comments, there's no place for me to comment back to them. But if I'm in the private chat, it says chat with host and other guests. So I can just watch the comments, but I can't chat with them.
Oh, I can do that for you then.
Oh, it's okay. I don't need to. Yeah.
Candy, I was going to tell you that if you know of any businesses in Hayden that need masks to open, let me know. I'm buying 100 of them from the 3 C's over the next 2 weeks to donate back to businesses who might need them but maybe can't afford to do it. Just let me know, and we're going to be delivering them out for the next couple weeks.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, the 3 C's had to cancel their fundraiser, so they're trying to make it up by making masks for people.
Yes, that's a very good idea.
So I thought we'd help them out a little bit.
Dr. Cook, does everybody in the school district have enough masks?
Actually, we'll take as many as anybody wants to give us.
Oh, good. I'll bring some over. Good. I'll bring some over for you.
We've got a drop box out front, and we check that often.
Okay.
Believe it or not, that's actually a demand for us.
Is it? Okay, good. I'll have 25 today at 1:30, and then I'll have another 25 over the next couple weeks. So I'll just bring them by as I get them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's the least we can do. The teachers in 271 have just been phenomenal. I can't thank them enough.
The pictures look great, Kyle.
Thank you.
Okay, you're up, Anita.
Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday Eve, I guess is what we call it in our house, because we cannot wait for the weekend to get here. At least for me, maybe I can watch something besides Disney Plus and I don't know, Supergirl on the TV this weekend. Hope everybody's got their coffee. Got my coffee mug. Everybody got their coffee mug. Drinking out of my dad's ugly antique coffee mug today. He turned 91 last week, so we're honoring him today with this mug. Just wanted to say good morning, and I'd like to introduce, if we could please, Dr. Stephen Cook from the Superintendent of Coeur School District. I wanted to take just a second and say, as the parent of 3 children in the Coeur d'Alene School District, I cannot thank you enough. Your teachers, I'm going to get a little emotional here, have been phenomenal with our kids. So please thank them. We don't pay them enough. If they need $1 million next year, if they need unicorns to bring those, if they need anything, I will be there for them next year. They have just been phenomenal. So thank you for all of them. They are a blessing to all of our kids. So just a brief introduction. Dr. Cook grew up working on his family's farm in Dodge City, Kansas. And from there, he went to Bonner Springs, a suburb of Kansas City. Most recently, he worked in Douglas County, a Denver suburb. As a former chemistry and physics teacher, high school and middle school coach, building administrator, and district administrator, he's a lifelong educator with 30 years of service in public education. Stephen got his BS in science education from Kansas State University, Wildcats, his MS in education from the Emporia State University, and his doctorate in education from the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk. I'm supposed to say that in the middle there.
Yep.
Steve and his wife Stephanie live in Hayden and have 3 adult children. And I just want to know if you flip a coin during football season for Kansas State, Kansas, or how you actually go about doing it.
Yeah, it's K-State for football, Kansas for basketball, right?
You're a smart man. Very good. That's what I do too. And I'll go on mute and let Dr. Cook talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Anita. This is honestly a pleasure. And it's very cool for me because this kind of just all shut down, right? Like all these kind of opportunities to go out and talk about the great work that we're doing in the school district and how our kids are knocking it out of the park and how our teachers are just providing great opportunities for kids. I thrive on the chance to go out and brag on them. And so this for me I'm super excited. And I have to be honest, Anita, I don't know what day it is ever anymore. All I know is that I'm sitting in front of my computer and getting really darn good at doing some kind of live streaming or doing some kind of virtual meeting. So it all blends together for me. So I'm gonna, if it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the normal part of our job for the first part and talk about what it would be like if this global pandemic would have never happened, and talk about some of those things we're dealing with that are the very real parts of what we do, and then shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit of how we've had to respond in the last, really it's been about 5-6 weeks, but quite frankly, it feels like it's been 2 years. And so I'll start with the fact that we actually have a lot of good stuff going on that's really kind of exciting because it's long-term fixes for the things that we're looking for. So let me take a minute to talk about that. So if you recall, about 15 months ago, we performed a curricular audit, which was a deep dive looking for things that we needed to repair, fix, and change in the school district. And we got tremendous feedback from that. And it was actually really good data and things for us to find. Additionally, I went out and did a listening session at every school with teachers, with family members, with parents, and went all over the community asking. I did over 70 meetings to get feedback on what was it that we were frustrated with and happy about and all those things. And we took all that and we built a strategic plan that's going to have about 10 parts to it when we're all complete. Those strategic plan items are underway. We've built many of those. The 3 that we've pushed in front of the board already is a revamping of how we're going to start writing curriculum, a revamping on instructional framework, and a revamping on our assessment plan. And all that's out right now for public feedback. So you can go to our website and comment on those. We've got 3 more that are coming. All of those will be presented to the board in the next month or 2. We call it an equity framework, which is how we're going to deal with providing services and opportunities for kids in a manner that reaches everybody at their needs and at the levels of to help provide them access and opportunity to have the most valuable and educational experience they could hope to have in our school district, K through 12. A social emotional learning plan, which is what are we doing on the fringes of what we teach and learn with schools and in classrooms so that all kids feel like they're incorporated into a community that makes them feel like they're a part of something special, feel safe and valued in that environment, and creates that sense of we're in this together. And in some schools, you guys know that's already thick and rich and robust. And in some schools, that's more of a challenge. And so that's part of what we're building is this comprehensive set of expectations for how we're going to deal with kids. So whether you come from a very stable, loving, caring home, or you come from a situation, which unfortunately some of our kids do, in which they don't know what it's going to be like when they go home during the day. And the safest place actually for them might be the 7.5 hours they're in our schools. And so we want to help support them in that, whatever their circumstances are. And then the last one, which is extremely important, and we've been working on this one for quite some time, and I'm going to expand upon this, is the long-range facilities plan. And where do we look and where do we go in the next about 10 years for meeting the needs of the school district? You know, we're crowded. We have over 11,000 students in our district in 17 schools, and we just keep growing. And the growth isn't evenly distributed all over the district. And so we've got some issues to deal with, and that's part of what we're taking on with this long-range facility plan. And so one of the components of that, I'll just stop there for a second and expand. One of the components of that has been a super fun activity is redoing district boundaries. I had a former superintendent who's now retired. He said, the very first thing you want to do to get run out of town, Steve, is go out and volunteer to redo school district boundaries, because everybody loves being told they're going to have to change schools. And boy, he wasn't kidding. It has been, we did a great process. We had almost 40 people on the committee to analyze our boundaries. We hired a company out of Oregon to help us with the data and maps and demographics and kind of forward projections of what the growth opportunities were going to look like in our community. And it took us about 7.5 months to get all of that process finished. And even then we still had headaches. But one of the things that we found was that there was a very real opportunity for us to do some things that solve problems with growth long-term for the district, and would start to map that out. And additionally, creating boundaries that developed what I will call feeder programs for the district. In other words, you have 2 comprehensive high schools in Lake City High School and Coeur d'Alene High School. And if you can build, and this is one of the things that we took on, try to build some form of, these are the elementary schools that feed into these middle schools that feed into this high school. That's not currently in place right now. So we've got kids from all over the district going to middle schools all over the district, going to high schools all over the district. And so building that feeder model was one of the things that we feel like we've developed in this boundary review. Secondly, we've worked on trying to balance some of the socioeconomic diversity in the district with changing these boundaries and modifying the differences or the spread of where we have pockets of high poverty and where we don't, and try to balance some of that. We had some geographic challenges with that, because you can't just pick a pocket of people out and move them over to another geographic location in our community. But nonetheless, we were able to help with some of that in some regards. And so those boundaries, we're working on them now. They're in place. They're voted on. They're approved. The new elementary school that we're building on Prairie and west of Ramsey, between Ramsey and Atlas, is just moving along very, very well. Actually, it's improved and sped up during the last month because, believe it or not, they've been able to add construction crews over there because of the shutdown of construction in Washington. And so they're bringing extra crews over. So we got a little behind there for a bit, and now they're starting to catch up. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that can continue, and that we can get that school will be ready to go. Not just the building, but the site and all aspects of that school will be ready to go when we start back up into school in September. And so that's kind of the big work right now that we're focused on. A lot of strategic planning work that's going to point us in the right direction for really, honestly, the next 10 years. A lot of work on boundaries we're still working on. And I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but we have different schedules at our high schools, and actually different graduation requirements that at both of our high schools, which is so weird for us. And so one of the things that came out in the curriculum audit was that's an equity issue. And essentially what you have are students that go to CHS have more time in their core content because they have a 6-period day, and the students that go to Lake City High School have an 8-period day, which gives them more opportunity to take more classes. So you wind up with this kind of fascinating, is it more important theoretically to have a kid have more exposure to more classes to find out what their interests might be, which you could argue is what students at Lake City are getting, or at CHS, is it more important to have lots of opportunity to work with teachers, more minutes in core content classes for arguably for kids that might be college bound to have a higher challenging academic load because they have, it's substantial. I'm not going to minimize this. It's a 25% difference in time by the year's over. It's almost a full quarter of instructional opportunity that that kids in CHS are getting, that Lake City kids aren't, that kids at Lake City aren't getting in their exposure to those core classes. the trade-off is they get more opportunity to take more classes when they're at Lake City High School. So the long and short of that story is Lake City's been running on this 8-period block schedule for about 26 years, I think. And CHS has been in this 6-period schedule, I think, since the dawn of mankind. And so we've got to find a way to solve that issue, because I think right now I've joked about this across the community. We may be the only district in the country that has different graduation requirements depending on where you go to high school. So definitely a problem for us to solve, and what's that going to look like, and definitely a lot of emotion, a lot of passion around that. So I think I'll take just a couple of minutes to talk about life, how life has changed since mid-March. And so I'll just tell you, I was on March 11th, that's a Wednesday, I was subbing at at Lakes Middle School for Jenny Nelson. I was subbing for her class. And at the end of the day, I got a call from the health district and said, hey, we might want to start talking about some things that are going on. And by Saturday, we were in full shutdown mode. And I can tell you that time moved so slow at that point. And then it was 19 days straight before we stopped to come up for air. We worked every day to try to figure out how in the world we were going to manage this. And now here we are in what I would call, we stood up a remote learning environment in about 2 weeks. It has been substantially challenging. Our teachers are phenomenal. I cannot brag on them enough how amazing this has been to go from, here's just an example, 70 million kids going to school in the United States. And out of 70 million kids, about 400,000 of those kids prior to this event were in virtual schools only. So that's that's about 0.5% of the students across the country. And so and everywhere across the country, that means schools across the country stood up remote learning environments for kids in 2 to 3 weeks to get essentially 70 million kids into an online learning environment. And I'll be the first to admit it's not the best, but at least we're able to deliver some things that we could deliver to our kids. And so we've been going round and round about what's those highest priority things. And I think I can summarize it up right now. The first one is we make sure we can feed kids. We feed about 2,500 meals a day across this community to our students. We're actually in 14 locations. We actually are delivering. We're using school buses right now to deliver food to places where kids can't get out and get to the sites where we're feeding. We have emergency childcare set up in 2 different locations for the children of for our students of healthcare workers to ensure that they can continue to work. And then as we've ramped up this remote learning environment, we have, I think we're at about 3,700 Chromebooks and laptops that we've checked out to kids across the district so they can access the remote learning access that we need across the district for them to do this work with their teachers. And all of a sudden, everybody's really good at Google Hangout and Zoom and Google Classroom and all these different apps for the way they're doing. And I have gotten more comments from parents like, oh my God, I had forgotten how hard the Pythagorean theorem was, or the quadratic equation, and why do I have to do this homework? And so it's been fascinating and fun to listen to people help their kids get what we think is most essential. And I think lastly, one of the things I want to tell you is we've gone round and round about how best to service kids in this environment, whether or not kids should be graded, or even if grades are fair at this point. We've had a lot of parents concerned that if we don't give grades, their kids are going to be at a loss when they have to compete for scholarships for against other kids across the country at universities and things like that. And I would tell you, we've come up with a solution that's kind of a little bit of everything. If kids just can't, one of the things we're trying to do is hold harmless. No kids punished by the fact that they're in the middle of a COVID environment right now, and that there's just no way to do any better than this. And so there's some kids are going to opt for pass fail. Some kids want to choose to compete at the high school level. We're only doing grades at the high school level. Some kids want to continue to compete for grades at the high school level. We're going to honor that, and we're going to keep that moving forward. So, but we're also going to make sure that no kid winds up punished by this, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word, but the idea that kids have to have resource and access and not all kids do, that could be a challenge. So I think I've got a few more minutes. I've got a 8 o'clock that I have to jump over on, but I'd be glad to answer any questions if you guys would like to ask any. So.
Dr. Cook, we did have one comment that they mentioned that they thought last period should be the homework period. What do you think on that one?
What we've done with teachers, if we've just asked them to standardize their access across the district, and part of what the struggle is right now that we're dealing with is so much responsibility is being placed on parents that especially if you've got kids in multiple schools, trying to schedule how homework time happens or how they access their teachers when they need, like office hours, whatever you want to call them, it's extremely difficult to be consistent with that. And so we're asking our teachers to make sure that you just stay connected as best you can. We had, going into this, we were fortunate enough to have about 93% of our kids had access to Wi-Fi and online access. So we've only had to fill in the gaps for about 700 kids or so, about 75 to 300 kids. And we're doing that with things like hotspots and whatnot. But as far as when to do the homework, that's we're not going to dictate that. We'll let parents and families figure that out for the schedule that fits them best.
And another comment, I have 2 grandchildren, and one just absolutely loves this learning environment, and the other, my granddaughter, she's a social bug, and she really misses her kids. So any advice you might say, for the social bugs?
Yeah, we've got the same thing going on around here too. There are people that are really struggling with this socially, and they just can't get connected. And we actually, even staff that feel that way. So there's about 1,000 staff in the school district. We try to do things to keep people socially connected. And I think it's important. And many teachers are doing this across the district, just pulling up their kids and giving them opportunity to get that social interaction with not the burden of, and here's some essential learnings that we need you to focus on today, but just to have a chance to look at each other and talk and joke and have fun. So.
Mm-hmm. And our last question is, Coeur d'Alene Charter is closing for the summer on May 22nd. Are we going to consider the same thing?
Yeah, we've talked about that. And I think at this point, it's probably too early to tell, because we actually haven't officially closed yet. We haven't shut down. We haven't said that we wouldn't even go back yet. Now, I'm not saying that to be controversial, but we haven't limited the ability. And I think one of the things we're committed to, we're gonna try and pull off graduations in some form. Now, whether or not that's traditional or it's a drive-through or it's virtual, we don't know yet. And so I would anticipate that we'll honor, right now, just shooting from the hip, we'll honor the traditional schedule. So we'll go into June, and we'll continue doing all the emergency services that we're doing right now. We'll feed kids. And then we have a summer feeding program too that we've done every year that will be in some way, shape, or form available for kids this summer. And then we'll also offer, at least at the high school level, some form of summer school and extended school year, so kids can access, and especially those that need credit recovery, that kind of thing. So I anticipate some aspects of the year looking very similar to the way it always has.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cook, for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We know you have to move on to another call. So with that, we really appreciate it. Let us know how the Chamber can help the school district.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I would tell you, because we're still doing a lot of face-to-face stuff with kids, and we still have lots of work that we're doing, and we're making 2,500 to 3,000 meals a day. anybody that has extra masks, we're open for it because we use the heck out of masks right now. So glad to take those. We have drop off at the central office, or just contact us. Let us know. We'll make arrangements to get them picked up. So that's the one thing I would tell you. And just keep making sure our teachers know that you recognize and support the work they're doing. It's weird and it's hard for them, but they're doing the best they can, and we're figuring it out, and we get better at it day by day. So thanks for the opportunity to share with you guys, and everybody out there, stay safe.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cook.
Okay.